All right, joining me now to discuss the World Series is Levi Weaver from The Athletic. Thanks so much for taking a couple minutes. How do you think this series changes now that it's headed back to Arizona?
It's hard to say. The atmosphere always, changes by ballpark, but it's the World Series, so I think no matter what park you're in, it's just gonna be electric. I mean, the last two nights in Texas, I covered the Rangers for 7 years. I've never heard it even close to that loud in that ballpark. It was insane. Um, I think, having not had any games yet in Arizona, I can't say for sure, but I got to think that it's going to be pretty raucous here as well. But other than that, I don't know. The Rangers have played really well on the road this postseason, so I don't necessarily think that that's like a kiss of death that they didn't win both games at home. I feel like we'll know probably a little more after game three.
What are some of the things you're left thinking about after these first two games? Because each of them were sort of dramatically different from one another.
Yeah, so the first thing is, man, what an absolute classic in game one, with the late inning heroics and the walk off home run, and it's just the sort of things that postseason legends are made of. But I was also really impressed by the Diamondbacks' ability to come back. That was a loss that was the sort of thing that could stick in the craw, I think, of a lot of people, and they just came right back the next night. Merrill Kelly was great. The offense played small ball and had a lot of sacrifice bunts, and they're just stealing bases right and left. So it didn't phase them. They came right back out and punched back, and I was really impressed by that. Um, so I think it's a pretty well matched series. You've got one team that operates a lot in small ball and things like sacrifice bunts and steals, and another team that has just bashed their way through the playoffs and hit home run after home run. I think I would not at all be surprised to see this go 7 games.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what you thought in terms of duration of the series, but just getting back to game three here, the pitching matchup, who do you think has the edge going into game three when you look at these two pitchers?
Yeah, it's funny. If you ask a casual fan or even any fan, in spring training, like, all right, game three of the World Series, you've got Max Scherzer against this rookie. His name is Brandon Pfaadt. You haven't heard of him yet. Anybody would tell you that advantage Scherzer, right? But he has, as he's come back from this injury, and he swears that he's physically completely fine, but he threw 60 something pitches in his first postseason outing, 40, I think it was 44 in his second outing. He hasn't been great. Meanwhile, Fod has been really, really serviceable. He hasn't lasted super long into the games, but when he's been in, he's been effective. And so now you're going to start to see like a bullpen game probably after around the fourth or fifth inning. That could be advantage Arizona, but then again, now the Rangers have some guys in that bullpen that weren't there previously. You got John Gray out there. You've got, I know we've seen Andrew Heaney and Dane Dunning. Martin Perez wasn't very good in game two, but you've got a lot of starting pitchers that are now in the bullpen. So, if somebody like Gray or Dunning can come out and give 3 or 4 innings, then, that could swing the advantage back in the direction of the Rangers.
And how does having three games in 3 days also affect utilizing the bullpen or really just the series in general?
Yeah, it does because those it makes it a little bit more like a regular season stretch. In the regular season, you've got games every day, and it'll be 7 games in 8 days or 9 games in 10 days, and so your bullpen usage has to be a little bit more reserved. In the postseason, it's kind of 2 games on 3 days on. And so you do get these sort of all hands on deck situations, and each game is so much more important. I will really be interested to see how I don't have, I think, a good answer for you. I think I more just have that is a very good question for you because depending on what happens in game three with these next 2 games on consecutive days, it could really end up being something that impacts games 4 and 5 as we move forward.
You mentioned this pitching matchup. Just going back to that for a second, Scherzer going up against a guy that a lot of people aren't familiar with, and that sort of idea that before the season started it would be a no-brainer. But is it sort of a microcosm of what we've seen a lot of this season with some of the older, more veteran guys not really being able to, and you'll be able to articulate this better than me, but not really being able to keep up with some of the the changes that we're seeing to the game. I mean, you've got some of these young guys coming onto the scene who seem so much more capable in today's game than maybe in days gone by. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's if that's even relevant. It just feels like some of these older guys have struggled.
Yeah, a little bit, but then there are also guys like, look at Nathan Eovaldi, who's been around forever, and he's been pretty effective in the postseason. So I think there are exceptions to that, but I think that's probably a microcosm of a bigger trend that we are seeing in the game, where you'll get a lot of rookies that come up and they are big league ready. And of course, the team that I've followed the most closely is the Rangers, but look at Evan Carter, who's had 75 big league plate appearances, and now he's hitting third in the Rangers lineup. Corbin Carroll for the Diamondbacks is a similar situation where he came up and he was ready for the big leagues. And I think my theory is we're starting to see a lot of the analytics and biomechanics that really made their way into big league baseball a decade ago are now available to college kids and high school kids. And you've got middle school kids watching hitting instructors on Instagram and YouTube, right? So the information has trickled down, and now these kids, when they get to the big leagues, are kind of big league ready.
That's fascinating. You mentioned that the Rangers have played really well on the road in the postseason, which is true. So, why is that? Do you think is it just a squad that's really not afraid of any kind of formidable crowd? And you mentioned how closely you've covered them. I mean, I imagine that plays into their hands heading into what should be a pretty raucous environment, at least as raucous as what we saw in Texas.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be any more hostile than Houston was. Houston hates the Rangers probably as much as any team. You know, I have been slow to credit managers in the past because I just kind of assume like, look, players are the players. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. I've really seen a difference in the Rangers team this year under Bruce Bochy, who just the sort of calm, collected, hey, I've been there before, we're gonna be fine mindset has been really reflected amongst his players. And then also credit too to guys like Marcus Semien and even Corey Seager. And we did see some emotion out of Seager when he hit that home run, but by and large, he's kind of a little bit of a baseball robot, kind of goes out there, keeps his head down, gets his business done. It's the culture of the team has been one. For example, they don't have a home run celebration where you'll see with other teams that they've the Mariners have their trident, or the Twins have the fishing vest, and I think those are super cool. And I talked to Bruce Bochy about that back in June, and he was like, yeah, you know what, that's just not these group of guys. They're just really not into that. It's funny. It's kind of maybe they're a little bit boring, but it's going to serve them well in a situation where they need to just be a little bit calm and boring and collected.
Yeah, just kind of do what they normally do, not get overwhelmed by the moment. Are there any adjustments that you see that are clearly evident that you think the Rangers need to make heading into Game 3 and beyond?
Boy, that's a good question. I do think that they could stand to do a little bit more of just fundamental hitting. And listen, I think it was Evan Carter that said after Game 2, I could be wrong on who it was, and it was a bit of a blur. One of the Rangers hitters said, "Hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. So if a pitcher executes his pitches and does exactly what he's supposed to do, he should get all the batters out. Like that is what should happen. Hitters succeed, and I'm paraphrasing now, but hitters succeed when pitchers make mistakes. And Merrill Kelly didn't make that many mistakes." But Marcus Semien, you see a lot of his hits this year have been pull side, and you've seen hitters kind of succeed against him, or pitchers, sorry, succeed against him by pitching sort of low and away. If he can take those balls and hit them to the opposite field, and you don't want to take the Rangers out of their game. They are a home run hitting team. You don't want to get away from that and try to be, they're never going to be a better Diamondbacks than the Diamondbacks. But if they don't give you those pitches, maybe take what you're getting and do a little bit more opposite field singles and doubles hitting until the mistakes happen.
Is there anything that you've seen that surprised you from either one of these teams in this series specifically?
Yes, but only one of them do I think might have any bearing going forward. The first one was Corey Seager when he hit that home run, and to see him just absolutely screaming before the ball even cleared the fence, like that was very out of character for him. He's always very calm and collected, at least as far as the media sees. So that was a surprise. And then for the Diamondbacks to come back after losing just such an absolute heartbreaker in game one, to come back and just seem completely unfazed by it in game two, I thought that was for a young team that hasn't, they don't really have a lot of those superstars that have been through it. Tommy Pham is a veteran. They got a couple of guys that have been through a few things, but by and large, kind of young guys that haven't been through a lot of these storms. And they came back and they were fine in game two. And I thought that was very impressive.
Based on that, I mean, I know you've covered the Rangers more specifically than Arizona, but being so close to coming back to Arizona with a 2-game lead versus a split at one, the poise, the sort of composure, like you said, for a young squad to put it back together and to get that win and to just rebound really quickly. How do you think that serves them moving forward? I mean, as you analyze these two teams and what we've seen so far, I know you said it could go 7. Are you thinking maybe Arizona has the edge based on what you've seen, or what kind of feel do you have for the series at this point?
Yeah. So to the first question, like how will it serve them? I really even think we saw that in the NLCS when they went to Philadelphia. They're down 3-2, and that's a very man, the atmosphere in Philadelphia is just one of a kind, and they were not fazed by that. I think they drew from that experience going into game two. I mean, like we've had our backs against the wall before. This is not new, and so how that serves them going forward, if they are down 3-1, 3-2, and their backs are against the wall again, they have that experience to draw from and go, we've done this before. As for like, who do I have having an edge? I do think that the Rangers have more, on paper, I think the Rangers are probably a better team, but on paper, the Brewers were a better team. On paper, the Dodgers were a better team. On paper, the Phillies were a better team. So, what does that matter? I told a friend yesterday, I really don't know that this is a series where we're going to look back and go, yeah, the better team won. I think it might be a series where we look back and go, well, if this thing had gone 51 games, it would be 26-25 at some point. Like we're just going to run out of games before we figure out who's a better team.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Enjoy this next stretch of games. I know it's an exciting time to have been having covered this team so closely, and now to see them kind of on the verge of maybe doing something really special. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.